Hello, this is Gasser Ahmed. Welcome to this presentation on how to block web form spam bots using the Honeypot technique. So first, let's talk about web forms. What is a web form? A web form, also called an HTML form, is an online page that allows for user input. It is an interactive page that mimics a paper document or form, where users fill out particular fields like name, phone number, or email addresses. Web forms can be rendered in modern browsers using HTML or related web-oriented languages. A web form can also contain a combination of form elements, such as input, checkbox, submit button, and etc. Alright, so after we knew what a web form is, let's talk about spam bots and how they affect web forms. A spam bot is a piece of software written with a specific purpose of filling out those web forms with fake information that benefits the spam bot author, including abusive language, ads, spam links to malware and phishing websites set up by scammers. Most form spams are created by bots which are programmed to find web forms and fill them out. When a person clicks on these spam links, they may be susceptible to malware downloads or loss of confidential information. Spam links may also be posted by bots to generate traffic to shady sites that generate ad revenue through them. So, how can we stop a spam bot? In order to do that, we have to think like a programmer writing a spam bot. The simplest of spam bots see a form and fill in every field on the form. So, what is the solution? The honeypot technique, in my opinion, is one of the best techniques to stop a spam bot. However, before I go into details on what honeypot technique is and how to implement it, I want to cover two other options that are still in use to prevent spam and why you shouldn't use them. The first is CAPTCHA, which I'm sure you saw it at least once on some websites, and the other is adding a test question to your form. So CAPTCHA is an image that renders text in a not so easy to read way, also known as challenge text. By requiring users to type the challenge text into a text field, it verifies some form of human interaction and intelligence. So, if what the user enters matches the challenge text, the user is said to have successfully completed the challenge, and their form submission is allowed to proceed. Spam bots, on the other hand, often lack the intelligence to defeat the challenge. First, because the challenge text appears in an image, not HTML markup, reducing their chances of reading it. And second, because they are often unaware that the form field attached to the CAPTCHA is looking for a specific entry. That is, most spam bots fail CAPTCHAs due to one of these reasons. Alright, the other option we can use to stop a spam bot is adding a test question to your form by implementing a question and answer field. For example, a sign-up form may include the following questions. What is smaller, 8 or 9? Or what comes first, E or Y? Or what is the capital letter of G? Humans can easily answer these questions, whereas spam bots will not be smart enough. Once the form is submitted, the answer to the question can be tested. If it's correct, the form was likely submitted by a human and can be handled accordingly. Otherwise, a spam bot is detected. So, after we talked about CAPTCHA and test question techniques, there are for sure downsides for using them. So please, pause the video and try to figure out why you should avoid using any of those techniques. Okay, while both options are easy and help prevent spam, I don't recommend them because they interfere with the user experience. Oftentimes they are frustrating to deal with and motivate users to leave. A good example for that would be CAPTCHAs that output text too hard for even humans to read. For that reason, I always recommend implementing the least invasive option available, which will be the honeypot technique, and that's what we will be discussing for the rest of this video. So a honeypot in terms of form submissions means that you are setting up an extra hidden field that bots will see and fill out, but your real human users will not. It's basically behind the scenes filtering step that protects your forms. It also doesn't add any additional steps for the reader people trying to submit your form, like what a CAPTCHA does. So that is, a spam bot fills in the field that the users cannot see, alerting us to their activity. If the honeypot field is filled in, we can confidently reject the form as a spam. You can implement this by adding HTML and specifically styling it out using CSS. It's true, though, that some sophisticated bots can now read CSS and JavaScript. However, this is still an effective method and worth considering if you've got some basic programming skills. Alright, now after we know what Honeypot is, let's walk through its implementation on a simple HTML contact form that doesn't have Honeypot implemented yet. In this walkthrough example, we have a contact form that consists of the following four elements: name label, name input, email label, and finally an email input. So most of simple bots will search with form common patterns, like label common names, input IDs, input common attributes, required fields, and etc. And then the bot will fill them with fake info. Also, most common fields to search are fields named like email, phone, or address. So let's cheat on that and create a honeypot field with the same name as one of the default fields and make it look real with a label, as we don't want to alert the bot in any way that this field is special. So here we added another email label and input fields. Next, we need to rename our default fields to something random. Here I renamed name fields to be nhash and email ones to ehash. Then we need to change the email field type to text instead of email. By naming the default fields to something random and changing their type to text, the valid fields now begin to look like honeypots to the spam bot. Keep in mind though that you have to convert them back to their proper name on the server side. Then we need to hide the honeypot field to keep the valid users from filling it out. In our form, I hide it with CSS, but you can also hide it with JavaScript. With CSS, I do it by setting the opacity, height, and width properties to 0. Then I move it to the top left of the page by setting top and left properties also to 0, with an absolute position to make sure it cannot be inspected or detected. I also added a z-index of -1 that will simply put that element behind any other elements in the page, which will make it almost impossible to detect that element. Another thing to mention for the CSS class, it needs to be a random word. In other words, if you call it something like height, then the Spambot writer will pick it out easily. For that reason, I called it no honey. Now we've finished setting up our CSS class, and we can add it to our honeypot HTML element. And then we will notice the honeypot field is no longer visible in our web form. And it's ready to attract spam bots. For the last step, on your backend, verify if that honeypot field came filled. If yes, congrats, you trapped a spam. If you prefer, you can do this check on the client side. In case of an AJAX form, this will avoid use server resources to compute unuseful data, but keep the backend validation anyway. When you catch a spam, just don't send the data and do whatever you want with it. So, to wrap up what we did, first, we created a honeypot field with the same name as one of the default fields, which was the email field. Then we renamed the default name and email fields to nhash and ehash respectively. Then we made the honeypot invisible to real users so they don't fill it out. And finally, we verified if the honeypot field came filled. If yes, then we trap the spam and we can stop sending the data to backend and then stop the form submission. So as a wrap-up, honeypots are awesome because they don't inconvenience users like web captcha or test question techniques do, and they are a valid tool for avoiding spam bots. Also, in the context of software engineering, honeypots improve the quality of the software not only by increasing its security and protection levels against spam bots, but by also providing a more user-friendly experience than other spam prevention techniques that interrupt the form submission process. In addition, honeypots are considered as a modern programming practice, which is important to meet users' requirements in a latest and advanced way. However, we need to know that honeypot is just a simple layer to prevent attacks in a simple way, and some technologies can identify even these patterns. So, use all the weapons you can against spam bots, but I believe that this simple pattern can avoid at least 50% of spams in your web page. Thank you for watching.